Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reader's Intrigue, where authors are going to read the first chapter of their book so that we can be intrigued and maybe find a new book to read. Get comfy, get cozy. Let's listen.
My name is Jim Curtis, and I'm here today to talk about my book Decoding Dylan, Making Sense of the Songs That Changed Modern Culture. As it happens, I can give you a date for when I fell in love with rock and roll and why I've wanted to write about it for a long time. The thing is, I grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, and as you may know by now, that's Elvis Presley's hometown. So that's why on a sunny Sunday afternoon in September of 1956, yes, it was that long ago, I found myself in the grandstand at the Mississippi Alabama Fair and Dairy Show. We were waiting for our hometown hero to come out. Elvis Presley himself came out, and I'll never forget the experience. His force, the very force of his personality and presence, knocked me back in my seat. Those of you who were not lucky enough to see the young Elvis live simply cannot imagine the force that his presence projected. I'll never forget it, that's for sure. Elvis's concert is about the only exciting thing that's ever happened in Tupelo. That's why to this day, if you do a Google search for Tupelo, you can find a black and white movie of the concert. I knew then that this was an important experience for me, but it took me a while to figure out what it meant. At the time, I wanted more than anything else to get out of Tupelo and see the world. And in fact, Elvis said to me, "See, I got out of Tupelo. You can too." Now, as it happens, I did get out of Tupelo. I've gone to lots of different places in my life and done lots of different things besides listen to Elvis. Like so many other people in the 60s, I started listening to Bob Dylan. It was no less than Bruce Springsteen who said, "If Elvis freed your body, Bob freed your mind." Well, my mind needed freeing, and Bob's songs, especially I Shall Be Released, just overwhelmed me. I've never been able to get those songs out of my mind, and that's why I came to write a book on Dylan. I'd like to tell you a little about it. Like I said, the full title of the book is Decoding Dylan, Making Sense of the Songs That Changed Modern Culture. The book is a response to those people in the 60s who said far out without really understanding the songs. What I'm saying in the book is that many of Dylan's songs are written in a kind of code. In order to understand his songs, we need to adopt the procedures of code breakers and look for patterns. One good way to understand what Dylan is and has been up to is to notice differences between him and another influential singer-songwriter, Chuck Berry. In the decades that followed the 60s, his catchy singable songs positioned rock and roll. Here's what I mean by that. Take the great line, "Hail, hail, rock and roll, deliver me from the days of old." In saying this, he was proclaiming that rock and roll was cut off from the past. And the very title of Roll Over Beethoven proclaims that popular culture, rock and roll, is cut off from high culture. The reason I mention these songs and what they imply is to make a point that Dylan has never accepted any of this. Dylan refuses to distinguish between high culture and popular culture. It's all the same to him and available to him to use it as he sees fit. Case in point, he studied T.S. Eliot's poem The Wasteland and Dante's poem The Inferno. He wrote in both of them when he wrote Desolation Row. Dylan also refuses to distinguish between the past and the present. He has a unified mystical sensibility, which the past and present merge together into the single flow of history. He has an indicative line about Rome in his song When I Paint My Masterpiece, and it goes like this: "Ancient footprints are everywhere." It may well be that ancient footprints are everywhere in the eternal city where people have lived for so long, but they're visible only to those who, like Dylan, have a mystical vision. One final reference to Dylan's song will lead us into the book. This is his song, I Shall Be Released, which overwhelmed me when I first heard it so many years ago and still continues to overwhelm me today. There's a transcendent element in his song that offers the possibility of release from earthly cares. Short of spiritual transcendence, though, Dylan songs release us from other limitations. I mention that because in writing Decoding Dylan, I wanted to release us from the limitations inherent in most books about celebrities, and that includes the hundreds of books that have been written about Dylan. I wanted to open up our understanding of Dylan by relating him to larger and larger contexts. Take, for example, the statement that Dylan is a genius. That's true enough, but he's not the first genius in the history of Western culture. We can learn a lot by relating him and his career to what we've learned about the lives and careers of other high achievers in the arts. And that's what I do in the book. With that said, let me read the first few pages of Decoding Dylan. Don't Look Back from 1967, the documentary film about Dylan's 1965 concert tour in England, features an unforgettable shot. In it, a slender young man stands on a large stage in the glare of two small spotlights. He holds an acoustic guitar and wears a harmonica rack around his neck, and that is it. And no backup musicians, no backup singers. With the exception of a few solo pianists, few performers had ever appeared on the stage of London's venerable Royal Albert Hall without any accompaniment at all. And surely none of them had ever looked so completely and utterly alone. As Joan Baez, who probably understands Dylan better than anyone, once commented in her wonderful memoir and a voice to sing with, when he faces a crowd, he looks as though he'd rather be in a dark parlor playing chess. Perhaps he, in a sense, he is. Nevertheless, it does not do justice to the complexity of Dylan's psyche. He is very private, a recluse. The ever thoughtful, ever perceptive Baez comments that when she accompanied Dylan and his then wife Sarah on the Rolling Thunder review in 1975 and 76, Bob and Sarah were ill equipped to handle the practical matters of life. I was forever handing them towels, bringing glasses of water and cups of coffee, lighting them cigarettes, looking after the kids, trying to get them seated together at dinner tables. I don't know what I meant to them. Sometimes I thought I was the male figure, or perhaps the caretaker, for two floundering beings from another space and time, slow-moving and strange beings, as out of place as wolves in the winter, for whom the gods had thrown together to fend for themselves. Baez would appreciate something that the Richard Gere version of Dylan in the 2007 quasi-biographical movie I'm There. He says, I don't know who I am most of the time. Dylan's lack of a stable cultural identity means that his psyche is simply not connected to this world, and his relationships with his wives indicate as much. When he married Sarah Lowndes on November 22nd, 1965, he denied it to his friend and did not appear in public with her. Even more radically, he never so much mentioned that a backup singer in his band, Clara Dennis, had given birth to his daughter, Desire Gabrielle Dennis Dylan, on January 31st, 1986. He later married her in Los Angeles on June 4th, 1986. The astonishing fact that he never so much as mentioned the birth of this child and his marriage to the child's mother would seem to go way beyond eccentricity and a celebrity's need for privacy. Male celebrities often have trouble with the women in their lives, but Dylan has never been close to men either. He's never had what earlier generations of American men would call pals. There's never been anybody in his life comparable to Bing Crosby's golfing buddy Bob Hope or Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack. He's never had flunkies at his beck and call, like Elvis's Memphis Mafia. To be sure, he toured with Robbie Robertson and the Hawks, made the legendary basement tapes with the band and the group, but he only played with them separately and then moved on. In any case, these sidemen were never collaborators, the way the E Street Band collaborates with Bruce Springsteen as an extension of Bruce's genius. Dylan's intense introversion may explain why he never became a movie star like Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, and Elvis did. In addition, the charismatic singer as movie star does that with him. He's only appeared in one major Western film, Pat Garrett and his son Billy the Kid, from 1973, in which he co-starred with James Coburn and Chris Christopherson. Film, however, is a notoriously collaborative medium. Dylan does not collaborate well, which may help to explain why his film Ronaldo and Clara from 1978 got terrible reviews. Only the documentaries in which Dylan appears offer lasting interest to his fans, including Don't Look Back and No Direction Home. How do we understand a great performer, someone who defines our time, but who looks like he might rather be in a dark parlor playing chess? If we begin very generally and think of Dylan's position in the American culture as a whole, we can say that he belongs to what might be called the reclusive tradition, whose representatives include the poet Emily Dickinson and the painter Andrew Wyeth. But poets like Dickinson and painters like Wyeth create their work in private, and it's usually experienced in private. We can state the dilemma that Dylan poses for us by saying that he is a performer with the mentality of a writer or a painter. With the exception of his concerts, he very rarely appears in public or on television, and he simply withdraws into his private world for long periods of time. However, and it's a big however, it was Dylan's fate in life to play a major role, bringing about a key transition in American culture. With the advent of television, the private representational arts of literature and painting ceded their former importance to the public performing arts of singing and acting, thereby creating the most important change in American culture in the second half of the 20th century. Unlike the presentational arts, the performing arts are collaborative because they require other people. And one must stand up in front of other people to do them, either on stage or on screen. Dylan's reclusiveness caused such frustration in the 1960s that his fans did many crazy things. When he lived in New York, they went through his garbage cans. And when he moved to Woodstock to get away from them, they followed him there as well, to his considerable annoyance. But there's a better way to decode Dylan than looking through his garbage cans or even interviewing him. To decode these make sense of Dylan's often baffling songs, we would be well advised to adopt the procedures of cryptographers, people who decode messages for a living. Cryptographers know that the first thing to do when decoding is to look for patterns. Any given sequence in a coded message may seem incomprehensible by itself, and the tendency to isolate Dylan's work from that of other artists has often produced what might be called the drama of enigma. Thus, Brutal Marcus book comments in his book The Basement Tapes. Out of some odd displacement of art and time, music seemed both transcendent, transparent, and inexplicable. Marcus, like many other Dylan fans, give the impression that the very fact that the songs are inexplicable proves how great they are. Yet in cryptography, what is inexplicable in isolation often makes sense as part of a larger pattern. That is certainly the case with Dylan's songs. We can do this by starting with some basic facts about Dylan's life and decode them by relating them to larger patterns in the lives of other creative people. The performer that we know as Bob Dylan was born Robin Allen Zimmerman into an observant Jewish family in Duluth, Minnesota on May 24, 1941. In February 1946, another son, David, was born into the family, and the Zimmermans moved from Duluth to nearby Hibbing, where the boy's father, Abraham, known as Abe, went into business with his brothers. This business was Zimmerman Furniture and Electric. It was located in 1925 East Fifth Avenue in Hibbing. And Bobby Zimmerman grew up, went to high school, and had his bar mitzvah in Hibbing. Taken by themselves, these facts are comparable to those of many other boys. We can ask ourselves then if some biographical facts are more important than others, and if so, which are they? People who've studied high achievers such as Dylan have identified what psychologist Dean Simon call biographical antecedents of achieved eminence. I prefer the simpler term markers of creativity. I'll discuss here 4 markers of creativity: cultural marginality, ethnicity, relation to the father, and birth order. I'll show why each of these applies to Dylan and other major figures in cultural history, beginning with the most general and proceeding to the specifics.
Thank you again to the amazing author that read us a story, and be sure to check out all the other amazing shows on RB Media. Till next time, bye!